Corey here, you're at the front line of that, man. And he was tasked to bring the message of the Blue Avians to a larger audience. And it was probably about 4 months ago when he came to me with this idea for a comic book. How do you get this information to the people that are shut down, the people that are locked up? How many of you have family members that you would love to introduce this to, but have no way of doing that? When Corey said comic book at first, I kind of was like, what? And then I thought about it and it makes sense. Comic books have been used going back to World War II as far as a way of disseminating information. The images, the combination of simple text with images, very much like an infographic, it lands and it plants those seeds in the subconscious. Corey's been avid about trying to find a way that is an all-ages platform for this message to go out. So as he talked to me more and more, this developed. And then lots of people started coming on board. We now have a very large team of creative individuals, and what we're going to play for you tonight is the launch of the trailer here for Sphere Being Alliance Return of the Guardians. Welcome, everyone. Enjoy the evening. Jimmy Church, holy crap. Right? I'll just say it now, I'm Jimmy Church. I'm here to introduce Corey. Fade to Black, Coast to Coast AM. Are you guys all believers? I'm so humbled to introduce Corey. I've done this a lot over the last year, introducing Corey and David, and you guys know all that, so, yeah, here I am. No big deal. But you know what? Everybody wave at me. That's for Corey, alright? Alright, I'm going to keep this. We're all here to hang out with Corey, so I'm going to keep this very brief. I do want to say this. Every time that I introduce Corey, or I bring him on the show, or we're doing interviews, I say the same thing, and I really mean this. I get emails. I get comments. Everybody knows about Corey, myself and David's relationship. You guys all get that. You've all heard the interviews, right? Okay. Alright. Alright. Everybody says, why don't they talk more? Why aren't we getting information? Why don't they talk more? Right? And I'm like, that's all they do. Right? That's all they do is the writing, the website presence, the YouTube, Fade to Black. They would be on Fade to Black or Coast to Coast every week. I have to book other guests. I do. But I would do that. They are right there. Corey, am I wrong in saying that? Can I shut you up? Say, no. That's what he wants to do. That's what he's here to do today. I'm so excited. Please listen to everything that he has to say. It's not about to question things or to have judgment. It's to collect information and share that knowledge with your friends. We are at the brink of things. Can you guys feel this? No longer are we the strange group, man. It's the rest of the world that's trippin'. Am I right? I'm going to say this right now, and I mean this. I want to introduce my good friend to you, Mr. Corey Goode. Corey, get on up here. Corey Goode, thank you. Corey notices a bird feather on the stage and picks it up and holds it up for everyone to see. Is this a sign? Well, thank you for joining me. I appreciate everyone that is live streaming at home joining me as well. First of all, I'd like to thank Roger and Renee for putting all this together for me. It's outstanding. Thank you. Most of you have heard my story, and I'm going to go over it again. So a lot of this you've already heard, but you have some eye candy to go with it this time. When I was about the age of 6, I was pulled into a program that we refer to as the MyLab program. They identified me through standardized testing originally. Come to find out, my family has been a part of a multi-generational experiment as well, going back to World War II when my grandfather took part in Operation Whitecoat. So this was something I was sort of born into that I found out about more recently. In the past, children were selected through standardized testing in public schools. Currently, not as many children are used. They used in different smaller programs, but for the most part they're using clones. The clones are assets that they see as a little bit more disposable than the children that they were exploiting. They used all types of very bizarre types of training, including sensory deprivation, putting you in deprivation chambers for hours and hours and making you do visual exercises. They would also put us in very bizarre and upsetting virtual reality scenarios and see how we would react, and do personality profiles and decide how they were going to use us in the future. They were doing all of that to desensitize us to violence and seeing other people violated, which is difficult to do with children that are intuitive or empaths, but they were giving it their best effort. A lot of people hear of the MKUltra program and they like to lump everything under that. The MKUltra program was a mind control. That's what the MK stood for. All the other Ultra programs and related programs had different training. They had different agendas. We've pretty much been lumping everything under the MyLab umbrella since it's gone public. We're all under mind control, every single one of us. We're socially programmed by the norms around us. We're programmed by television, movies, media, and we're getting to a point where we're starting to break free from that on an individual basis. We're utilizing our co-creative consciousness to overcome a lot of this mind control. The technology isn't working the way it used to because of the change in vibration and the raising of our consciousness. They've already lost many in the MyLab programs. Once they're put back into their normal life, they are mind-wiped, blank-slated, but they exhibit symptoms of PTSD, but there's no real reason for them to have PTSD. When I was first being picked up and taken to these MyLab-type programs, I found myself being slowly introduced to non-terrestrials. You would go into like a virtual reality setting where they put the goggles on you, and you're sitting in a chair, and there would be a bunch of military and medical people in the room. And then, when you took the goggles off, there would be a gray alien sitting at the table. They would just spring it on you. Yeah. They spent years acclimating people to being in the presence of non-terrestrials, because no matter who you are, it's going to throw you off. We're genetically programmed to respond viscerally to the non-terrestrials. When I was almost 17, I was brought into the secret space program, which I had been groomed for all throughout the MyLab program. They drafted me into Solar Warden. It was my Christmas break, 1986. My birthday's in 11 days, so it's February 22nd. It was during December just before my 17th birthday that they brought me in. They assigned me to a research vessel, and the captain did not want me on board. In the past, they had put what he called children on board, and they cried for mom, and it took about a year for them to acclimate, and he did not want to go through that. It was too disruptive. So instead, they sent me to the Intruder, Intercept and Interrogation program, where they would use intuitive empaths to interrogate non-terrestrials that they had caught in our solar system or on Earth. I was in that program for about a year, just under a year. And then they reassigned me back to the Summerfield. I worked for scientists and engineers. When I was working on the science side with the scientists, they called me a specialist. And I was a technician when I was working with the engineers. Who remembers talking about the dart craft coming in my backyard to pick me up? Renee did a pretty close depiction right here. It was the first time that I had been taken back to the Lux since I had been separated from the SSP program. There's the backyard. Now in the beginning, my wife didn't know what to think when I was telling her that a spacecraft was picking me up in the backyard. Laughter. She went in the backyard a couple times and saw little triangular spots, landing gear divots. And one time she went out and she saw a pair of bare footprints walking out. They disappeared, and about 20 feet over, another pair of footprints coming back to the door. And that's when she started to really start to believe that something bigger was going on. The Lunar Operation Command. You notice it's shaped like a swastika. When I first went in, around the 1987 period when I saw it, it still looked like this. When I was separated, when I was coming to get debriefed, they had purposely built around it to break up the look of the swastika. So it no longer looks like a swastika. This was set up by the Germans, obviously, and it was the first human base on the moon that was allowed by the other groups. The moon is considered to be a neutral zone and the territory is You're not to encroach on the territory. So they finally got permission from one of the non-terrestrial groups to build in their area. There are at least 11 subsurface areas to this space. I was not privy to anything below the hangar area, which is about 3 or 4 floors down. Alright, here we go. This is what I was so excited to debut. This is the 3D rendering of the base and the dart craft coming in. I've told this story how I was walked to the front of an auditorium at the lock, and they just walked me to the front and left me and didn't tell me what was going to happen. And when I was sitting there, the room was filled with all types of people, including military and people that looked like they were political. And the people in the front started heckling me. And in the middle of heckling me, everyone got real quiet, and you can see why. These two beings appeared behind me. It's the first time we'd ever seen this golden triangle-headed being. It was just kind of. I don't know. It's like it was underwater and it didn't have any bones. It was just it was weird. And on it used its toes as tripods and it was going up and down on those as well. So that got the attention of all the people in the room. And then they started to ask me questions and here I was answering through me. The Cabal, for the lack of a better word. The Cabal is not a single group that cannot be defeated. It is a group of loosely knit militaristic syndicates. They're just criminal syndicate groups. That's all they are. They want us to build them up as an all-powerful force that cannot be defeated. That's part of the mind control. And as you all are seeing, it looks like their time is done. It's becoming so obvious. Some of the groups are real pragmatic, nuts and bolts, scientific, and they stick to that way of thinking. But others are very esoteric, very much into these different dark belief systems where they use sacrifice and all kinds of horrible things to boost their magic. I think we've talked about it on Jimmy Church's show. Very recently, after the change in administrations, the military-industrial complex, after some changes, started to send Marines into some of these FEMA bases. After the change of administration, a lot of them were supposed to give up their power. Instead, they locked the doors. So these Marines were sent to break through all the concrete, cut through the steel, and give them one opportunity to surrender. And if they didn't surrender, they were to kill everyone in the entire base. And these bases, as you know, can hold a lot of people. These Marines were special forces, and they were not briefed on anything non-terrestrial. They just thought they were going in to clean out a bunch of criminals. After they had breached the base, they found themselves face to face with reptilians doing battle with them. A lot of these Marines are, Southern boys, and the next thing you know, they're fighting something that looks like the devil according to their belief systems. So these guys were so incredibly traumatized, they couldn't function after this battle. This was very recently, in the last 2 months. And a lot of other bases are being cleared out. This base, I don't know where it was located. It was an unacknowledged base. So it wasn't one of the ones you'd hear about like the Denver airport or any number of the other ones. The Draco are not all powerful. They have been defeated in the past. Over the millennia, the reptilians have been kicked off of our planet. They come back during times of weakness, like after a cataclysm. Most recently, about 12,800 years ago, we had a huge cataclysm, which destroyed a civilization that you're familiar with, Atlantis. And this group was keeping the reptilians in check at that time. And after they got flattened, the reptilians came back in force and we have the mess we have now. And apparently, they are playing a negative role, their group consciousness is. When Tyr showed me our group consciousness, it was shown to me as a person that has extreme PTSD and is somewhat schizophrenic, has been extremely traumatized. And it turns out that our superconsciousness has been in an abusive relationship with the superconsciousness of this reptilian group. And it's like a cosmic domestic violence type of situation, and we're both supposed to be learning something through this process. There are a number of groups that make up the Draco Federation, one of which is these insectoid beings. They have different types. You've all heard of Ant-like beings, Mangus-type beings, and they genetically modify their own genome and create these other types of insectoids that some people see that have like 4 arms. They can design them to do whatever they want. In the beginning, the ancient breakaway civilizations, they were kind of, it was just a concept. I was reading about it on the smart glass pads and, I got the general information that they had been making contact with us for a long time. They had been helping us after cataclysms, and we considered them. A lot of people in the past considered them gods. In this case, the Mayan group, they are completely service to others. That is their mandate. Back when they were on Earth, they were not originally from here. They had been brought here from the Pleiades during a rough time in their star system. Their population grew to over 40 million people. They disappeared because their group came back to get them and remove them from the planet, but they did leave a contingent behind that had underground bases and also had bases in the Kuiper Belt. So they've been here with us the whole time. I mentioned a little bit about the acclimation process of ET contact. We have a genetic or cellular memory going way back from these beings. We are socially programmed with a fight or flight response, and genetically. ETs are aware of this. Some of the negative ones will exploit us to get loose from us, and the negative ones will also appear to us as beings of light to manipulate us. That's why. And I don't want to discourage people from continuing to do their spiritual path and to reach out for guides, but we do have to be careful and use a lot of wisdom when you're communicating, because these beings can present themselves as angels of light and give you great information, but just poison the well as they do. And it's happened quite a bit, and it confuses the people that are in real contact, and it confuses the information, which is the goal. Just be careful when you're reaching out. When you're fishing in the swamp, you can catch an alligator, and those aren't the ones you want to catch. Well, we've all heard Mars is a dead planet, right? Well, it's not an uninhabited planet. This is a declassified film of Camp Century, a top-secret Arctic base. It was from Project Isu Worm. I'm showing this because not only have they been building bases in Antarctica like this since the 50s, but this is very similar to how they bases on the Moon and Mars. They would tunnel out the ground, clear out the ground area like this, and then use mostly local materials, fabricated materials, to build inside. And then they would use nuclear power in the beginning. Then they graduated to where they were using thorium generators, and then now they have zero-point energy. So they don't have to have the more dangerous technologies. I'll let this video play for a few minutes and chime in. This is. Some of you may have seen this on the internet. It was released, I don't know, I think a year or 2 ago. Everything was prefabricated. Everything had been put together on Earth, designed to go together like a puzzle by numbers. And I helped, actually, to build out an outpost on Mars. We used a lot of the local materials on the surface after they had built below ground. And it was very much like this. It was much lower tech than you would expect. The interplanetary corporate conglomerate. We talked about how they use slave labor. They have been in continual trade with over 900 ET species. And believe it or not, non-terrestrials from other star systems are traveling here because they love the technology we build. There are ETs coming to trade in their used cars for cars we build. But that's not bizarre. I mean, that's far ahead our breakaway civilization is. Now, they don't have money in the cosmos. It's a barter system. They barter and trade technology and biological material. And I'll kind of leave it at that. I don't want to get too dark, but it involves the human slave trade with close to 1 million people a year. The inner Earth. It seems to be probably the most popular topic that I've talked about. A lot of you remember me talking about witnessing the city in the deep cavern. This is an animation that Renee created to help depict it. It's very good. The only difference was the cavern was the size of a state. There's no way to really accurately depict on scale how large it was. It's unbelievable. There's mist up along the ceiling of the cavern. It was like New York, or Manhattan, under the ground. Inside these pillars, natural pillars, they had built into what looked like a bunch of condos. I guess that's where all the... They don't have money. I was going to say that's where all the rich people live. They don't have money. They're a fourth density being, and apparently they trace their lineage back to the Earth, and some of them, including the Ants, are here, back 18 million years. Here's a new image of the Anshar Library. Antarctica, the beginning of partial disclosure, which we want to avoid. Recently, I was brought down to the Anshar city. I was teleported, and found myself in an area I hadn't been. It was a hangar bay that was full of these very large egg-shaped craft. And waiting there for me was Gonzalez, Kairi, and two of the very quiet Asian-looking groups that have the crystal under their skin on their forehead. They all have a crystal implanted under their forehead. They are very tall, they are very quiet, and they have a very strong presence. They don't have to talk. And I will continue with the experience after we got in the egg-shaped craft. They were obviously ready to go on some sort of an expedition. They were wearing suits that looked something like chainmail. And when you put them on, they're activated. The chainmail just kind of. The threads get tighter and tighter. And it looks like it's all one piece. The boots. The helmet look kind of like. What do people? The fencers, a fencing helmet. It's not called a helmet, a mask. In the 1938–39 Antarctica expedition, the Nazis discovered Atlantis and they kept it quiet. They found what we are now calling pre-Adamite ruins, and this is a group that I showed a picture of that looks like the pharaohs. They have the very strange torsos. They have weird-shaped, narrow ribs, real wide hips. They definitely don't look like they're from around here. The originals were 12–14 foot tall, extremely thin, very skinny. And when they found these bodies, they said it was obvious that they had not developed naturally on this planet. They had developed on a planet with much different barometric pressure and gravity. Since these ruins have been discovered, we've all seen on the news all the different bigwigs and the cabal that have been going down and visiting Antarctica for many different reasons. It's basically turned into a cabal Disneyland. What has been discovered is that they have discovered 3 massive ships that were used to crash land on our planet. They jokingly call them the Nina, the Pinta and the Santa Maria, because they brought this group here to Earth. We flew right through the wall, and then popped out in an ice cavern similar to where I had been taken before. Where we landed, it was probably a football field away. They were hard at work excavating using pressurized steam to dig through the snow and expose some of the structures. There were all types of bodies that were laying out from these pre-Adamites and their genetic experiments. There was even one. It was a male about close to 5 foot tall or shorter, and he was in a fetal position, and he had a tail. So this group, they were very big into genetic experiments, and from what we found there it had gotten completely out of control. The bodies were not. You know how you picture the caveman just frozen and you chip him out and reanimate him? They were in terribly shape. Their bodies were all contorted, arms wrapped around their bodies a few times like they had just been hit by something like a deluge of water which frozen instantly. After we had gone inside the library, and the 2, I don't have a name for them right now, the 2 Asian-looking groups, they went in and immediately started removing. In the snowbank there was obviously a corner of a building sticking out. And the suits we were wearing allowed us to walk right through the wall. And then we were inside this library that was full of all types of scrolls, bound books. And they walked right to one tray, and they opened up a folding box and started loading it with these metal scrolls. And I saw one of the metal scrolls that had popped open and they had looked like laser etching on them. They were strange-looking characters. I don't know why they removed them, but they obviously did not want these pre-Adamites getting access to this information. The pre-Adamites, when this deluge happened, everyone on the main continent, they were wiped out. All of the enclaves across the planet survived. And all they had with them was the technology that they had brought with them and the knowledge to engineer. So they were in survival mode. We've all heard about the Mandela effect, right? Is everyone familiar with that? The Mandela effect is just one component of this ascension that we're looking forward to. Our co-creative consciousness is interacting with time, space and matter. We are co-creating what we are experiencing. We have the power to co-create a positive temporal reality or a negative one. It just depends on where we feel like we need to be as a collective. Now, time is elastic, just like space is, and all of these paradoxes we've created by traveling back in time, we were trying to fix by going back. And we're just making it worse. Then all of a sudden, we started realizing, and then it was confirmed from a non-terrestrial race, that these timelines were snapping back together. So we didn't need to try to fix it. There is some sort of There's something intelligent about the way the universe was working. It baffles a lot of the scientists, but it doesn't baffle this group. As I stated, ascension is going to be a co-created experience. We are creating the ascension and we are creating it in tandem with what is happening in our galaxy. There are energetic changes going on that are undeniable and we have to either acclimate to them or they are going to tear us apart. And that's where, we see the good are getting better. The bad are getting worse. And I've added to it, the crazy are getting crazier. They can't handle the energies. No one can. Now, just about everyone is expecting some sort of solar event. The information goes everything from complete 360 degrees full circumference, mass coronal ejection that they believe is going to happen. And when that happens, the sun will appear to go dark for a number of days before it pops back into equilibrium and comes back alive. And in that moment, they expect there to be a moment of flashes, and a lot of this is feedback through the cosmic web from other star systems. As the energies are hitting them, these cosmic energies that are causing all this change, it feeds back from star to star, and depending on where you are in the cosmic web, you're going to have this ascension event or event that helps us go through a massive genetic and consciousness change. What Uriah has explained to me is that this density change that we're going to experience, it is almost completely a consciousness component. It is a change in consciousness. And once we have a different, broader consciousness, we realize our co-creative abilities and then matter changes, our bodies, the world around us changes, because we change it. Linda Moulton Howe asked Corey a question, but it was inaudible. Here's Corey's answer. In different areas of the galaxy, in between. As we rotate around the galaxy, the great year, or cycle, about 26,000 years, we're. In certain open areas there are giant gas clouds, for the lack of a better word, that we've been aware of for a long time. They were sending craft out gathering telemetry from these very hot gaseous clouds. And when they were taking a look at this energy that our solar system is traveling through as we travel around the galaxy, they were noticing that the people were starting to behave bizarrely. So they reproduced that energy in a controlled environment and they found out that negative people started to have sort of a breakdown. They couldn't. They were having mental and emotional breakdowns. And people that were positively oriented were starting to bliss out. They realized pretty quickly that as our solar system passed through this cloud, that not only was this energy going to around the magnetosphere of our star and then feed in through both poles, then traveling to each of the planets where they have magnetic connections to, but that this energy feeds back throughout the entire cosmic web. In our local stellar neighborhood, about 52 stars, we're in the very center. And there is a supergate that is just outside of our solar system that gives you access to not only everywhere in our galaxy but other galaxies. So it's used for travel and commerce by many different beings. So we're in a very coveted area of this local stellar neighborhood. It's a feedback from within the cosmic web, which I'd have to give more information. I've talked about it on Cosmic Disclosure about how there's an electric connection between each stars they're traveling. As it's spinning around the galaxy. It's like electricity. They take the path of least resistance. That's how stargates work. You're traveling through the cosmic web. Well, I guess that's it. We would like people to subscribe to our YouTube channels and we really want people to pay close attention to this project. We're really excited about it. As Roger said, I've been asked, why would you do Cosmic Disclosure, bring on all these guests? To legitimize the information, and then go the route of sci-fi. Tyr had basically told me that what we're going here is a great job, but we're preaching to the choir. We need to reach out to other genres and plant these seeds in their consciousness. And if we do so, we can bump that 100th monkey effect up to a millionth monkey effect. And we can use this medium to help to guide the co-creative consciousness in a more positive direction. And from the beginning, dear Tyr told me it did not matter whether people believed me or not. He said it was of no consequence. It was of a consequence to me, because I was the one out there talking, but I finally realized that he was right. It's not about whether people believe me or not, it is about how they process and assimilate the information. If the blue avian message can help us raise our consciousness, then we're going to be ready for this energetic explosion from the sun. Thank you. We've got a little bit of time. Does anyone want to do a Q&A? Q&A. Do we have another mic? Awesome. Raise your hand and Rene will. He'll pick whoever he wants. Question: I'm wondering about, since the frequency has gone to 36 Hz, the Schumann resonance, it's getting very fast. We are going very fast through this process, and I'm wondering, what do you think? Do you think that the ascension event will come before the full disclosure? It's possible because it just jumped from 2015 was 16 Hz. Before that it was. All along they'd been measuring it at 7.8 Hz. Corey: right. Right, yeah, and there has been. A lot of scientists will disagree that there's been a change in the Schumann resonance. They play with numbers a lot, just like they do with earthquakes. But, yes, the frequency of our entire solar system is changing, and we have to have the ability to change along with it. That's why we're seeing a lot of people having a lot of triggering and mental issues and emotional issues right now. We're being forced to deal with our karma and all the things. And you may notice, all the things that you've buried a long time ago, have they started popping up out of the blue and you're being forced to deal with them? Well, there's a reason for that. All of the emotion tied to those experiences, those emotions have density. They're tangible and they're a part of you. These energies, as they're passing through us, when they hit those things we haven't dealt with, those energetic anchors, they hold us back. We can't progress until we start to deal with ourselves. We have to follow the message. You don't have to change your religion, your belief system. All you have to do is to start trying to forgive others. If you don't forgive others, they have this same power over you now as they did when they traumatized you. You have to forgive yourself for what you've done, and you have to focus daily on being more service to others, become more loving. And it really helps if you get on a high vibration diet, because that is going to help you deal with these energies in a more positive way. Question: hi. I'm a little curious about the jobs that you were given when you entered this program. Could you elucidate? And also, why you were allowed to talk about this? No one's stopping you. Corey: well, as it turns out, there is sort of a disclosure war going on. There are factions of the Air Force that have been working with, like the NSA, DL, and other military intelligence groups, and they have a space program that they have been promised is going to be made public very soon. And they are excited about it. This is a program that I used to call the Lower Secret Space Program. It's lower technology, and they are told that they are the top of the pyramid. There's nothing above them and they believe it. And if you tell them otherwise, they are ready to fight you. Now, the Navy also has a much more advanced program. There's a lot of competition between the Navy and the Air Force in space. Right now, the Navy, a faction of the Navy, has wanted all of this to come out. Are all of you familiar with William Tompkins? What he has been doing is sanctioned by a certain group within the Navy, Naval Intelligence. And that group is a part of the alliance and a part of the group that had been encouraging me to bring information forth that was much more detailed and talked a lot more about what was really going on out there than even the people in these Air Force programs knew about. Question: Corey, I came up with this question a year ago, but after today, I think I know your answer. Basically, are you optimistic about the eternal struggle between good and evil for the positive outcome? You can rephrase the question or just say yes or no. Corey: no, you're right. There. We're seeing it all around us. The energetic changes are causing the evil people to become more evil, which they expose themselves. They can't control their behavior. They expose themselves, and as we're becoming, the good people are becoming more awake, we're getting to the point that we're not going to take it anymore. It's time that we get out and start demanding answers, demanding the full truth. When they come out with these partial disclosures narratives, we need to be in their face and saying what about this, and make it impossible for them to draw out over 50 or 100 years this partial disclosure narrative that they're planning on doing, which is they're going to tell us, we found Atlantis. It's amazing. And that's going to blow everybody's minds as it is. A good portion of the planet thinks that the planet is only 7,000 years old, so it's going to blow their paradigms immediately. And then after that, they're going to reveal this Air Force NSA program that they have that is barely more advanced than the ISS. They have 2 bases up that they made out of repurposed rocket stages as they were launching rockets into space, the lower programs. They're going to reveal this, and they're going to say, oh, by the way, not only do we have the secret space program, but we've discovered these weird ruins on other planets. That blows our minds again. What they've been doing in Antarctica is, since for the last almost 14 or 15 years they've had very prestigious professors, archaeologists coming down and helping them document it. They've been videoing it, documenting the whole process, except they're going to give us a sanitized version to where it's only human. They're removing the one site where they've been filming. They've removed all the pre-Adamites and the hybrids and just left the ancient humans that were working with this pre-Adamite group. And then later on they're going to discover these ships and these pre-Adamite beings. And what these cabal groups had planned on doing is then saying, oh, yeah, we knew about this the whole time. We're related to them. We're their bloodline. Therefore, you should worship us and make us your leaders of the planet. And we're not going to let that happen. I don't see how it's possible, but all of these groups have agreed that that is the narrative, that is what they're going to push. Question: Corey, I'd like to know what your knowledge is on the medical field of titanium and implants that are being put in people for mind control. Corey: I haven't heard this specifically, but they use all sorts of methods like that. They use vaccinations for viruses like the flu vaccine. I used to work at a company, a pharmaceutical company, that produces a large number of those vaccines. I did computer support, and I was talking to the bioengineers, and I asked them, do you take these shots? And they're like, oh, no. I would never give my family these shots. And I asked, why? And they stated there were all kinds of things, genome, that we put in those things that people don't know about, including insect genetics. Questioner: and mercury? Corey: yeah. But they've also been putting in nanites that are inactive. They are activated by a field that is turned on. Question: hi, Corey. My question is about the ascension, and it relates to the law of one, which you've recently been reading. How does the density relate to the rest of us who haven't read that and what we call dimensional rising? Is there a correlation between the two, or are they just 2 separate things? Corey: yeah, those terms get interexchanged quite a bit. The way Tyr and Kiri have both explained densities to me is that each density is just a different consciousness frequency. A lot of people think that, if there's a 4th or 50 density being in the room, we'd be like, Corey moves his arm in front of him, where are they? No. If you think about it, you have bacteria, plants, animals. You've got 1st, 2nd density beings that we can touch, we can interact with. Some of them can make us sick. So it works the same way going up the rung, up the ladder. These beings are physical, but they've obtained such a higher level of consciousness above ours that they, at that point, they have almost full use of their co-creative consciousness and their abilities to manipulate matter and time and space. Therefore, they are able to teleport and do things that seem magical to us. Question: Does that seem more to be the physical abilities? Because when we raise in dimension, what I've heard about that is becoming more service to others and not having any of the lower dimensional polarities. Does that also come into play with this? Corey, at a certain point, there are positive-negative duality within the densities going up, I believe, to the fifth. I'm still learning a lot of, a lot of this stuff. We're trying to figure things out. We're all picking up pieces off the ground, little pieces, and then grinding them together into this lens that we use to process all information. So that's where distortions come in. All of us, have distortions. And when we do get full disclosure, we're all going to be in for a shock. We're all going to have to shift our paradigm and our belief systems to the new reality. Question: since 2007, I've been keeping a dream journal. And in many of my dreams, I've experienced getting training, learning lessons, being checked out in craft, just learning how to use energy healing, how the universe works, and there's always beings there, one or more beings, usually humanoid. Usually, I don't see them, but I know that they're there. Never any greys. Never any reptoids, usually humanoid beings that are providing these lessons, providing this training. Those examples are just a few. So I wondered if there is anybody else, or you, have come across that, and are they doing that? Corey: yes, there is a large confederation of benevolent beings that are trying to influence us. I've been getting so many communications from people, doctors, lawyers, attorneys, that do not follow this field. They have an experience where they see a blue sphere. They Google and they find my information and they contact me to start asking me questions. What is happening is there are so many of you out there, I'd say just about every one of you sitting down here, you are not from here. Most of you are not from here. There are a lot of other people like us that have bought into the lie, and they forgot who they were. These experiences are trying to remind them of why they're here. A lot of people think that Gonzalez and I are the only ones in contact with the blue avians. There are thousands of people out there in contact with the blue avians, and they've all been given different missions. Question: hi, Corey, I have two quick questions. The first one is, besides doing our work on our karma, and on the energy and the high vibration diet, is there anything that we can physically do to prepare for the ascension and a shift in the energy, the cosmic energies? And then the second question is, what can we do to help? Is there a way to donate money? Do you have a vehicle to which we can donate money to support what you're doing and to support this whole process, and what can we do? Let's say this is the first time I've heard you speak or I know anything and I walked in. What can I do to help? Corey: yeah, I do take donations. I'm hopefully starting to get to a place where I will not need donations, but we are crowdfunding this campaign. And our website www.comicdisclosure.com did go live, and if people want to donate, they can there. And I'm sorry, what? The preparation is almost entirely a spiritual shift that we need to undergo. Our bodies and spirit, mind and spirit, are so interconnected that on a physical level we do need to start being careful what we are putting in our bodies, what information we're putting in our minds. There's so much negative information or tainted information out there. It's really hard right now. Using discernment is very difficult. There is too much to discern. So this is going to be more of a spiritual type of answer than a physical one. Question: hello. Our question is about. We have two questions. Can you talk more about the alliance, like who are these beings? Are they humans? Are they hybrids? And are we all part of the alliance because we're here? And is there a linear timeline of when we're going to hit these clouds? Corey: okay, the second question first. We have been hitting the outskirts of these clouds since at least the 1930s, if not the 1920s. So it's been going on for a long time, but we're heading to the thickest part of it. I'm sorry, what was the other? Questioner: the alliance. Corey: the alliance. Yes. Anyone who is working to raise the vibration and to work for full disclosure, you're the alliance. Applause: yeah. The biggest thing that they've been trying to impart onto me is that every single one of us, We have to stop looking for something to come from the sky and change everything. Those of us that are going through this change, that are awakened, we are the ones that we've been waiting for. We are the ones that are going to fix this and change this. No one is going to come in and do it for us. We've helped contribute to the problem. We are going to have to contribute to the solution. Question: Hi, Corey. What? I have two things. One thing is the world's coming unglued right now. There's a lot of media bashing of Putin and Trump, and I know you guys have mentioned a couple of things. I don't know if you want to share your viewpoint, if there's a lot of media lies or if it is a true exposure that's going on. And also, when you're talking about individuals being connected with, have you heard of any blue spheres being put around people, and if so, what would those actions be? What would be happening? Corey: Typically, in my experience, if they've put a blue sphere around someone, they're trying to shield them from something, or protect them from something. Question: Have you been aware of that happening? Corey: Yes. Question: Okay, great. Corey: It's happened to me and the crew I was with on the Mars expedition. Question: Okay, cool. And then anything you can comment, because a lot of people are coming unglued out there, and it seems like, is the media like lying? Or is it really true exposure of these people? Corey: There is so much propaganda from every side, even the alliance. There's a lot of propaganda with them, and the current president, I don't like to say Trump, because so many people get triggered, the current president, even though he's really perplexing me on what he's doing on the environmental stuff and all that, he was and is backed by this alliance that is trying to bring about disclosure and get rid of this syndicate that's been running the West. Question: Hi, Corey. Have the Blue Avians or anyone told you exactly how many dimensions our universe has? And would it be 11? I could be wrong, but our current quantum physics says it's 11 dimensions, and could that, if it in fact is 11, is that why so many people see 1111 around, or some multiple of 11? Corey: That's a good question, because I see it all the time too. It's bizarre. And usually that is to me just a synchronicity. That means you're on the right path. Now, Tyr had told me that there is an infinite number of densities. I say infinite because everything is designed to return you to source. And if we're all one, we're like fragments that are all trying to return back to source, and we have to go through these densities. Now, dimensions, parallel dimensions, there are infinite parallel dimensions. Question: Recently, Stephen Greer went on record saying you're a really nice guy, but... Corey: But I'm brainwashed. Question: That the human trafficking that you talk about out there is a falsehood? Corey: I wish it was. Question: I wanted to see if you had a response to his claims. Corey: Well, he's had his briefings. I think a lot of his briefings have come from the Air Force faction. They believe what they're telling him, and I don't see why he would have a reason to doubt them. The positive and negative aliens existing, that's just a belief system. We all have them. Science is a belief system. So I can't fault him for having his own beliefs, because we all have our own beliefs and not everyone's going to agree with me. And, there is some stuff that I'm sure I've gotten wrong, that when we do get a disclosure event, I will see that there is some things that, I'm human, that the things that I observed on the glass pad, that was decades ago. I really don't have anything against him or any negative feelings towards him, because I know that he's on his journey and doing the best he can, just like each of us are. Question: Hi, Corey. I want to say, thank you for everything you've done, and for risking your life. Applause and standing ovation. Corey: You're all going to be on my next vlog. Well, I think we're getting close to the end here. Question: Inaudible. Corey: By 2026. The question: Linda Moulton Howe, was why was Elon Musk too determined to get to Mars by 2026? Question: Inaudible. Corey: By 2026. The question: Linda Moulton Howe, was why was Elon Musk too determined to get to Mars by 2026? There is a time window that they have. It's between 2018 and 2024 that these different syndicates groups have used probably future technologies, plain old classical physics on the mechanics of our solar system when they were going to reach the most energetic part of this cloud. And that's when they're expecting this solar flash and these events to occur. Is in that time window. A lot of the elites pumping money into finding a way to get off the planet and to put colonies on other planets for continuity of species in case something happens to the Earth. And a lot of them believe that. They have different beliefs about what's going to occur when this solar flash happens. Some of them believe it's just going to knock out electronics for a little while. It's going to be like the year 2000, the Y2K thing. It's not going to be that big of a deal. Others believe we're going to get hit by giant mass coronal ejection and burn everything up. The groups that believe that are seeding information to people that have the resources to go off-planet to start to do a continuity of species program, which we've already had since the 50s and 60s. We've already been creating vaults out in a place you asked me about that I said I couldn't say a whole lot about at Contact in the Desert. I was trying to be quiet here. There are continuity of species vaults that they plan on using to repopulate the planet or also after they terraform Mars. So Elon Musk, his agenda, I believe, is a good one. He's wanting break free from the control system that wants to keep us out of space. The same with Virgin Space. They're trying to get out and not only set up a situation to where there would be continuity of species if an event happened on Earth, but they're also wanting to start to take advantage of the vast minerals that are out there. There are asteroids out there that are a good part precious metals and what we call rare earth minerals that they can mine and use. Legislation has already been passed to protect them legally if it's sort of like if there were any human rights violations that happened or anything, they won't be held accountable on Earth for the things that will happen, and that's a law. That's already been passed. That's out there. I can get information on name of the law, but Dr. Sala has reported on it extensively. Okay, we'll do one or two more. Question, okay. Thank you, again. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit if you could on the 20 and back program, and the timelines that you saw there and compare them to what you're seeing on your second 20. Corey, when you're in a 20 and back program, you're completely isolated from everything that's occurring on Earth. You're isolated from television, radio. There wasn't the internet when we traveled back then, but they do not allow you access to any information that you could use to exploit once you've been returned to the regular timeline. So I would not have seen anything, because I was completely removed from the Earth for that time period. Question, inaudible. Corey, back in the day, they used to use mainly a chemical type of blank slating. It was a chemical. They used chemicals and then hypnosis and program you with screen memories, which are the hardest things to shake loose. 3–5% of the people that they blank slate, the memories come back. And these are usually the intuitive empaths or the highly sensitives. What occurs is that you have this physical hard drive here, Corey points to his brain. Well, what you are experiencing is not only stored right here, otherwise you wouldn't have memories of past lives. What occurs is that you have all this information up in the cloud, virtually. People that are intuitive empaths or highly sensitives, they have more of a connection to their higher self, and it's almost like if you have a hard drive dial new in a data center, or something happens and the information is removed from the hard drive, it just backs up or downloads from the cloud or the backup. This is a process that happens in trickles and then it just hits you all at once. Most of it hit me within 2 weeks of coming back. Then I had a lot of the screen memories like, originally, my memory of when I was taken from my house to enter the program, was that I was teleported through some sort of stargate out of my room. After all of the screen memories had been broken through, I remembered I got up, walked out of my house to the front, got in a white van, and they drove me to Carswell Air Force Base. So they're real. I mean, they're brilliant in how they do this brainwashing and blank slating, and they are diabolical. Question, inaudible. Corey, yes, well, a lot of the people that have had these 20 and back experiences, and a lot of scientists, They will do 6 years, or 8 years. They'll come back and they've been. Not only have they been blank slated, but they've been given screen memories that causes them to have a reaction and then be the biggest skeptics of all. That's just crazy talk, when they were up there serving. It's different with each person how. They can't use the same type of blank slating and mind control with each person too. They have to have a personality profile and understand how the person. It's a huge process and it's a very involved process. It's not just a matter of them giving you a shot, giving you a false memory and then patting you on the butt and saying go on your way. It's a huge process. One more question. Hi, Corey. I'm right here. My question, I hope it's not too silly, and it might have been answered already, but it's pretty simple. It's concerning what we're going through right now and all the protesting that's happening all over the country. To me, I've been having mixed feelings, especially my generation's been like a generation where they want to stand up and they want to be heard, yet I feel that the tactics of protesting might not be the best from my perception. Corey, right. Questioner, my question to you is, what are the blue avians? What would be your advice to this uprising or protests against something that we know kind of has to happen and what not? Corey, well, I do believe that there need to be protests, but I do know for a fact that the control structure right now is to divide and conquer. And they know that the gig is up. They want us to be at each other's throats, because imagine all of that passion being directed at the control structure and how quickly